St. Lucia, this is Open Mike, and we now back to the third segment of our program. When we left off, we were just going to address the situation with our social programs, should I say. And you know, now more than ever, we have to be extremely careful with whatever monies that are coming to us, that they are intelligently disbursed, because social programs are one thing, but revenue is another. You know, I just want to quote the words of Margaret Thatcher, who once said that socialism is great until you run out of somebody else's money. So I hope those that are listening today will take note of that. Now, presently, I had someone on my show recently who indicated to me, Frank can probably verify that this year, in the last year, government took in some $300 million in VAT. Now, that's a kind of a windfall for government, but it's a downfall for the people paying the VAT, because what has happened, it has sucked up a lot of the resources within the private sector, hence the number of closures that we've been having. Now, if that money was well spent, it would be another story. But when one uses that money for unsustainable jobs, then we have a bit of a problem. Now, with what is looming there now, with the banking situation, the falling oil prices, we have to be super cautious in two ways. One, whatever revenue we collect has to be properly and intelligently disbursed. And secondly, we need to revisit the borrowings that are going on, because we are already $170 million there in interest payments, and we cannot allow that to rise anymore, or else we'll have a problem. Frank, what is your take on all of that?
Well, as you quite rightly indicated, socialist programs should basically be short-term, and they should go along concurrently with plans to get the economy back working, get people back into work and so on. Unfortunately, it seems that we've been on this track now for how many years? 10 years or more? And that's quite a long time to be, in a sense, giving people's money. I mean, we look at the last set of labor statistics put out by the Department of Statistics, indicating there were 5,000 new jobs created. When was it? Last December, thereabouts. I understand a substantial number of these was within the public sector, and a lot of those persons came from the programs which have been funded by the taxpayer. So in other words, it's really not doing anything for the economy. Right now, the concentration should be on expanding the private sector. I don't think over the last 10, 15 years we've seen any significant movement in the expansion of the private sector, and all efforts should be in that direction. Otherwise, we are going to go down the chute. As of now, I think our debt GDP ratio is what? 88%, which is one of the highest in the OECS, and the target set by the bank is 60. The average for the Caribbean is what, 65. So we're in a lot of trouble here. The amount of interest we're paying back is significant at about 17% of revenues. That's too much. So if we keep on borrowing, and we're borrowing to put into non-productive activities, it's going to aggravate the situation even more.
Mm-hmm. Right. If I can just add to what Frank has said, in addition to the VAT bonanza, we've had, which people aren't commenting on yet, the oil price drop bonanza. Now, when the price of oil drops, two people benefit, two groups of people. Number one, the consumer, and I've been benefiting, like all of us, from the price of the pump, and presumably driving more and so on. Number two, government. It has to be appreciated that government's tax on oil is a flat rate per gallon. It is not ad valorem. So government, I don't know what the figure is, government is also benefiting mightily from this drop in the oil price, and everybody has kept very quiet on this. It might be 30, 40, it might be $100 million a year, I don't know. But those two inflows, those two bonanzas, the VAT bonanza and the oil price drop bonanza, should be yielding government enough for it to eliminate the budget deficit and have more to plow into infrastructure development, which is development that benefits us all in the long term. Instead, what is happening? We don't know. We're kept in the dark, and this is something that a judicious government ought not to do. If the Russians and the Saudi Arabians had not set aside over the years a huge chunk of their income when times were good into sovereign wealth funds, they wouldn't be going bankrupt next year. They'd be bankrupt already. We are not an oil producer, but we're an oil consumer, and we have to set up not a sovereign wealth fund, but some type of reserve, well controlled by people who really can be trusted to make certain the expenditure is kept in hand. And this could be used, for example, to help pay for the infrastructure development that is so desperately needed.
Yeah.
For example, the transition from fossil fuels to renewable energy.
Now, Fred, you know, a situation that has me bothered tremendously is the fact that, you know, certain hoteliers like Sandals, who wanted to expand their facilities in St. Lucia, the government didn't yet see it fitting to give the concessions, that the additional concessions which they wanted, because it would interfere with their revenue. But what I'm saying, there are two types of concessions. What we're doing with the STEP program is indeed a concession, because you're giving money for something. And I would have thought that it's better to give a business person the concession, let them keep the economy going, and they in turn can employ people. What is your take on that strategy?
It's basically a form of investment, isn't it?
Yeah.
In one, it's expenditure. We are spending money. There are no returns coming from it. People are being supposedly in employment. In the other case, it's an attempt to, when you think of tourism as an earner of foreign exchange,
right,
it quite clearly says what we're doing. We're investing in
getting foreign exchange and employing,
exactly,
employing the people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the people who employ are learning something.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rather than a man just being paid. You know, I mean, it's commendable that if you can afford it, to have all these what you call social programs going, but then if we can't really afford it, I mean, like the Prime Minister himself said, I think he borrowed, or he was given $10 million US by Venezuela some 6 months ago to assist him. The fact that he had to go and borrow $10 million US, it's clear that what he had done before was not sustaining itself. And how much longer will people lend you money to do something that's not sustainable, you know?
Now, the thing is, people often come up and it gets emotional. They say, aren't you happy that people who would not be working otherwise are working? But that point
Scenario,
of view, it totally ignores the fact that we're talking about a country. We're not talking about one or two people. We're talking about the good of the entire country. And what is good for a small sector may not necessarily be good for the entire country. It's compromising the whole thing. Yeah. So what we've got to understand is that at some point in time, people may have to withstand a lower standard of living, hopefully for the long-term gain of the country when everybody can benefit. Yeah. But we seemingly are unwilling to do that. I think one of the problems that we have is the perspective of politicians. And I keep saying this all the time. Mm-hmm. They think in 5-year blocks. Yes. They think in being re-elected. And that expands all into the Eastern Caribbean. Because I think by now, if the European Union can talk about a European Union, I mean, Britain just went through some very serious discussions to find a way for them to stay within the European Union. If they can do that, why can't the OECS, because CARICOM, I have given up on CARICOM, right, why can't the OECS try their best to expand our mass, if you will? So instead of dealing with 170,000 people, we now have a market of 500,000 people. Right, Barbados is 380 or whatever it is. And they have an economy that they can work with. Yeah. Why are we finding ourselves in a situation where we've got 8 governments in a population of 500,000? We have 4 or 5 international airports. Toronto has 1 major international airport. They've got 2 million people. Why can't we think that way? And I think a lot of the money that we are wasting in this duplication of services could be directed towards our various massive debt loads, etc., and so on, and more productive activities.
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, a perfect example today is that we had discussed it last week in our program, the health situation. You know, I mean, with the 2 hospitals likely to come on stream. Dr. King said they want another $100 million. Right now, he said they're spending $80 million on what is going on, which is in pretty poor shape for what we're getting. And I don't know how we're going to address it. I see the Prime Minister, he told the European Union that he's going to open the new hospital in the latter half of this year. But tomorrow, or what you call Independence Day, they're just putting a name on it. They're having a function to put the name. I mean, we've known it's going to be the Owen King Hospital for a long time. I don't know what what you call the whole reasoning for that is. But by and large, what we would like to see is that if they can't open the hospital, at least let us do some work on Victoria Hospital. Another thing I was surprised to learn from Dr. King is that Victoria Hospital has more beds than the new hospital. And that's a $200 million.
Yes, I think I understood that.
Absolutely. This whole health hospital issue coming now with Zika, a fairly deadly virus, approaching our shores is nothing short of scandalous. We have Victoria Hospital struggling to keep going with 170 beds. The patients there are supposed to be squeezed into, I don't know how they're going to do it, 120 beds in the new hospital. The new hospital has not been finished, I'm told, because it needs some fairly low expenditure, such as the completion of the canteen and the kitchen and so on. Apart from that, it's ready to go, and you have dialysis machines sitting there unused while people are dying for want of these in Victoria Hospital. You have in Vieux-Fort, you have the St. Jude's Hospital suffering one cost overrun after another, and the cost overruns of that hospital will probably amount to 100% by the time it's completed. You have the ignominy of nurses and doctors working in the temporary Vieux-Fort Hospital, temporary St. Jude's. I refer to it as the Triple H Hospital, because it's a hard hat hospital with bits of roof falling onto people's heads. And apparently some of the nursing staff have to wear hard hats while they patrol the hospital. I mean, it would be humorous if it wasn't a scandal. And I think the Ministry of Health has to really get off their butt and do something about it. How are we going to cope with Zika, which is already threatening us as it's threatening Brazil? I don't know. I'm very pessimistic about our ability to cope.
You know, as we're talking about health programs, right as we speak, the Japanese are now agreed to spend $14 million on revisiting and refurbishing some of the fisheries projects that were put down over the last years that have deteriorated, mainly due to lack of maintenance. And I'm surprised to see that the Choiseul fisheries is not on the list, when in fact for the last 13 years, because of a poor engineering design, that the bay is completely polluted. And whilst we speak, we'll be showing you a television of what goes on down there, where the fishermen have been complaining for the last 13 years. So I'm appealing now to this administration to revisit what is going on in Choiseul, because it's deplorable, it's a health hazard, and it's terrible. St. Lucia, this is Open Mic, and we've now come to the third segment of our program. We'll be right back.